Hello, I'm Sean D. Francis, and this is part 5 of the Campaign Builder Workbook video series where I am going through the Campaign Builder Workbook step by step and creating a brand new campaign setting. The first 4 videos have already been made, obviously. I do apologize for some of the technical errors. I am trying to race through these videos, get them all done, and I am using tools that I've not used before, and some errors are slipping through. I'm also not in the most sound uh, proofed area, so apologize if you hear dogs barking and fire trucks and door buzzers and my phone beeping and various other things. Um, this really is a rudimentary video series just to show you how you can use the Campaign Builder Workbook. In the last video, we went through the NPCs of the village of Blackrock Keep. So the major NPCs, and we started kind of building out some of the minor other NPCs that could be in the village. This just is creating life to the village, giving you a sense of who is there. In this video, we're going to start talking about the structure of the village. And you may note that this entire campaign building process, we've not talked about maps. I consider maps to be very much a top-down campaign building methodology. It works. It is a good methodology. For me, these are just tools in a toolbox, and sometimes you have the right tool and sometimes you don't. And this is just one tool. You may want to start with a map and start building out from the map. This is starting with the story and building from the characters in the story up. But you have to start thinking about the geography and where things are located. And one of the first elements that the players are going to encounter will be the structure of the village, and we need to start defining the buildings. I used to be like, oh, here's the inn, here's a tavern, here's a warehouse, here's a home, and my villages were very cookie cutter. And then, thanks to Little House on the Prairie, I kind of hate to go back to that, but really watching how Walnut Grove, that little village, grew and developed, and how they used the schoolhouse for the church, and the main merchant was his home, and there wasn't a hotel, so if somebody was coming in to stay, like they had to find a place to stay, or they were camping out. It gave you a better sense of how the community operated. So I start with questions, things that the community needs. Where does the community get food? So this is most likely a farming community, but not everyone is a farmer. So the people, the blacksmith, the leather worker, where are they getting their food? How are they getting it? So I'm going to say that there's a tiny, we'll say like it's a farmer's market, and it's going to be at the inn, because this is going to be one of the reasons why there's even an inn. It is going to be kind of a community center gathering spot. So where does the community get the food? It's going to be at a food exchange at the inn. And where does the community get fresh water? I'm going to say that there is a source of fresh water nearby. There's going to be a creek. And it's going to be a big creek. Let's make that you say crick or creek? I'm from Montana. I have a whole philosophy of what a crick is and what a creek is, but it's not so we're not talking a river. It's not even as big as a stream. Maybe it's a brook. There's all sorts of classifications there, but we're just going to say it's a big creek. It's big enough that the entire village can get a good source of clean water from it. It's going to be fresh mountain water, crisp glacier water. Where does the community get supplies? This is going to be from the traveling merchant. So there isn't a store in town. So they get their supplies from the traveling merchant, and they have to put in orders. So even like the blacksmith, if they need iron in that, has to put in a special order and wait for a special shipment to come in. There just isn't a source anywhere in the immediate area. They may even actually have to travel to a nearby larger village to get real good supplies. But traveling merchant is going to be the source of their supplies. Where do most of the people in the community work? They're going to be working at the keep. And they're going to be servants, maintenance. You know, they're just going to be the people who clean up the keep, muck out the stalls, clean rooms, very low-level kind of work. But that's where most of the people work and get paid by the keep, by the military. The most prominent feature of the village. So this could be a building, this could be a geographic feature. I'm going to go for a geographic feature. I really want to hone in on the fact that this is in the wilderness, that this is a remote location. And one of the ways that we can do that is by having a very significant natural feature. It'll also be kind of a landmark in which people can find the village if they get kind of lost. And it is going to be a large rock outcropping. That kind of stands to the side of the village, and it's just this huge, maybe 200, 300 feet tall. Sometimes people climb to the top of it, and from the top of it you can gaze down over the expanse of the village, the small little village. What is the oldest feature of the village? That is going to be the keep. Where does the community gather to discuss issues? This is going to be two different locations. So we're going to have an assembly hall in the keep, but they're also going to gather at the inn. So there's two locations that are kind of the official places. So you can see that if Captain Liera, Lieutenant Toriak have something to discuss with the community, they get everybody in the assembly hall in the keep. That's where they can exert their authority. But for day-to-day kind of discussions, people will meet up at the inn. That is where they do their bartering. That's where they exchange news. So you have these two locations. Where does the community gather for entertainment? That'll also be at the inn. Where does the community practice the primary religion of the area? And this is nowhere. I've already stated in the campaign survey that they're trying to build a temple. So they don't have an official place of worship. They most likely will gather in somebody's home at this point. So there just isn't a place for them. Where do visitors to the community stay? Now again, most tiny towns, tiny villages don't have an inn. This one does. So visitors to the community are going to stay at the inn. But we're going to say this is a really limited inn. It has 2 rooms. So it's not the most comfortable, not the most spacious, not the most luxurious. But this is where, like the merchant, when he comes to town, stays at the inn. Where would a visiting noble stay? Well, the visiting noble is going to stay at the keep. It's a much better location, safer, more luxurious. So that is where a visiting noble would go. Where would the community go if threatened by a military force? Well, they'll go into the keep. Or flee into the forest. So where did the ne'er-do-wells gather? So you have malcontents, you have people who just don't fit into society, and where do they hang out? They probably they'll gather in the same place everyone else is gathered, but they'll also probably gather somewhere else that they can do their ne'er-do-well business. It doesn't necessarily have to be threatening to the village kind of business, just something that they don't want everybody to know about. I'm going to say that there's some falls. So we have the creek running by the village. And if you go into the wilderness a little bit, there's some small falls. And in modern terms, probably a great picnicking area. But this is where they gather. You have the rush of the falls, mossy rocks, a little clearing, and that's where the malcontents like to gather and discuss their malcontent ways. Where does the village bury their dead? And this is kind of a morbid thought, but it gives you a sense of, do they have a big cemetery? Is there just a little plot? Do they ship their dead off somewhere else? I'm going to say there is a tiny cemetery where the dead get buried. This also, if you have undead scenarios, it's good to know where the threat of the undead is going to come from. Where does the main road in and out of the village lead? And this is kind of important. You have a road that obviously leads into the village, but if you were to take that road out, where does it go? And I'm going to say that this leads to the regional larger town. And we'll cover that in the region area, but there's obviously many villages in the region. I'm going to say that there's a town, and it's a larger town, much more significant location, and there's one road that leads out of that town that comes to this village, and it's probably several days away. And this is what is the nearest town larger than the village. So here we're just thinking geography, and we're also thinking names. So I'm going to call it's the town of Gallows Hill, very mysterious sounding. And then what is the nearest city to the village? So this is the region's largest city. So Gallows Hill's probably another village that's close by to Blackrock Keep. It could be a town that has a store, that has a cleric, that has more resources. The nearest city is the region's largest city. Most likely this region's largest city. This village could obviously be located to a city in another region, but the way we're mapping this out, it's the city in this region. And we're going to say that is the city of Everspire. So that's the structure of the village. Now we get into the culture of the village. And so who are the primary people of the village? And this is this a human village? Is this a elven village, dwarven village, gnomish village? Who's here? Who's the primary people that you'll see walking around? And this is going to be primarily a human elvish village. Almost a 50-50 split down the middle. And what's the primary religion of the village? We're going to say this is, I don't have a pantheon figured out for this campaign yet, but we know how D&D breaks things down into alignments. This is going to be a chaotic good nature religion. And what story do villagers like to tell the most? And this is, if you're to visit the village and you're talking with somebody, they have something that they want to tell you about the village, like the history of the village, or something significant that's happened in the village. Um, what would they most likely say if you were to ask the village, like, what's the most impressive thing that's happened here? The thing that people like to talk about the most, and this would be the story that they would tell. And I am going to this becomes difficult. We have to flex some creative muscle here. I want there to have been a significant monster event here. One time a dragon attacked the village. So what stories do the villagers like to tell the most? The story of the dragon attack. What are the villagers most proud of? What they're most proud of is killing the dragon. So maybe somewhere in this village is a dragon skull. What are the villagers most ashamed of? Now, this is just like the secret element of the village. Like, what don't they want people to know? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they go to extreme lengths to cover this up, but boy, they don't air their dirty laundry out for everybody. So what are they most ashamed of? And I'm going to say that being bullied. This is a village that killed a dragon, and they're allowing these townsguard to kind of run roughshod over them. And they're not too excited about that, and they feel ashamed by it, and they're not going to admit it to everybody who shows up. Like, they're not going to say, oh, hey, we're being bullied. So it's going to be something that's kind of on the down low, and they just kind of weather it the best they can. What major festivals and holidays does the village celebrate? Now we again, this is a cultural thing. So if the PCs were in the village for an entire year, what are some of the major events that they would see? I like seasonal events, like having a Christmas event, those kind of things. So we're going to say that they're not farmers per se. Like, there's farms there, but they're not about farming, but they are about hunting and the wilderness. So we're going to say that they have a first hunt feast. And that probably is an autumnal moment where they go out and they start hunting and gathering meat to store for the winter. So there's that moment of the first hunt and bringing back the first kills, the first wild boar, the first stags, and they have the first hunt feast. And then we're going to say that there's a winter solstice festival. And then you have to appreciate the spring, the rebirth, moments of rebirth. So we're call it a sunlight festival. Yeah, we'll expand on these as we need to. And then maybe in the summer we have the week of frivolity. Don't know what that is yet, but we have a week and it's frivolous and we enjoy it. How do villagers feel about outsiders and unfamiliar people? Like, are they a closed off village? Do they not like unfamiliar people? This village being military, there's unfamiliar people coming in and out all the time. Different types of folk. So you have half-elves and elves and dwarves and gnomes, and maybe there's a dragonborn once in a while and a tiefling, and you get an entire mix of different kinds of folk in and out of the village. So they're going to be kind of okay with it. And maybe curious. They love hearing the stories of people from other lands. what do the villagers eat on a daily basis? And this is going to be pretty simple. Meat and gruel. What do the villagers drink on a daily basis? They have some of that sweet, sweet creek water. But what do villagers eat and drink on special occasions? This is to think in terms of those events, the first town feast, and that. What are the delicacies, the things that they crave? In America, for Thanksgiving, we have turkey. Easter, there's ham. Like we have foods. We have our feasting foods. So what are the feasting foods of this village? So we're going to say wild boar is going to be a feasting food. That's going to be a delicacy. But we're going to have like, ooh, gosh darn it, berry tarts. It's going to be a favorite summer delight. And then for drinking, let's stick with some berry wine. And then mead. So they harvest honey from the forest as well, and then somebody makes mead. And so it's not a large batch. They don't have mass volumes of it, but it's what they make. It's what they're proud of. Okay, and that is the structure and culture of the village. That ends our 5th video. We'll be continuing on in the 6th video, detailing out the village and moving on to the region after that. I'm Sean D. Francis. You can reach me at Sean D. Francis on Twitter, Sean at SeanDFrancis.com via email. And I would like to know what you think of this tool. Are you using it? Will you use it? Do you have a different method of creating your campaign setting for your D&D homebrew campaign? So talk to you later and see you in the next video.